Today we're going to explore how to use your Google Apps, specifically Google Forms, for you to be able to document different types of assessment, including observations, conversations. So you're going to start by coming to google.com, and you will require a Gmail account, but you can create one if you don't have one. And up in the top right-hand corner, it's going to ask you to sign in. So you will enter your Gmail account and your password. Once you're logged in, you're going to notice up here you have this little waffle icon, which has all your Google Apps. There's many in here. To get to Google Forms, you'll have to come down to where it says More, and then you'll see it gives you an option for Even More. And this opens up all the different tools that you have available to you. If you scroll about halfway down here on the right-hand side, you're going to notice where it says Forms. And if you click on there, it automatically takes you into a blank form. And you can either start creating a form right from there, or on the top left-hand side, if you hit this back arrow, it's going to take you back to your forms that you may have created in the past. So once you create them, if you're looking for them, this is where you'll find them. You also can start a blank form right from here. And you'll also notice there's different templates. So if you're looking to explore some different options. If you come into the blank form, right away here it's looking for a title. So if you click in here and delete that, you can name this form anything you like. And you might even decide to write in your expectation from your curriculum or whatever, however you want to identify what you're making observations of. Right away here, it's waiting for you to enter a question. So again, you can click in here and delete that. I often start with the name of the student. And right beside that, there's a little drop-down arrow, and it gives you all kinds of options for the type of response that you want. This comes down to a personal choice. Some teachers like to just put short answer and type in the student's name. I like the option of the drop-down box. So you can again click in where it says option, and you can start putting in your students' names. And you can keep adding options here until you have all your students in there. You'll notice here that you can either duplicate this if you wanted to, for whatever reason, copy a question, delete. You can also make it a required response, which means it won't allow you to submit this form without it, but that's up to you. When you're ready for the next question, you can come over to the side and hit the plus sign to add a new question. And here's where you'll start building what it is you're looking for. So I might put things in here. And again, I could make this multiple choice or a checkbox perhaps. Perhaps I want to be able to check off all the things I see the student doing. So maybe I see them decoding, and I can keep adding options. Whoops. Decoding. Maybe they are punctuation. Whoops. Etc. So you could just keep adding things that maybe you wanted to check off that you're seeing the students do. And what you're going to do is just keep adding different questions here that you want to have as a response. I myself like to keep a general one. And what I usually do is choose to have a paragraph response, so I can just type in there. So that way, if I see something that I hadn't predicted ahead of time, I have the ability to go ahead and just type in those observations. So you're going to keep building and building until you have your response. And I'm just going to come up here, and this will automatically save. You're going to notice it's still saying untitled form there. So usually what I do is I just highlight this, and I click where it says untitled form, and it copies the title for me. I'm going to go ahead and hit my back arrow right here in the top left and go back out to where all my forms are saved, and you'll notice the one I just created is sitting there. I'm going to take you into one that I have built already. And again, I did the similar thing. I copied my expectation. Now this is where you build the form. But when you're ready to actually use the form, you're going to have to come up here into the right-hand side where it says send. And it allows you to email it. So if you were wanting to perhaps use this on your phone or a different device, you could go ahead and type in your own email and email it to yourself. But alternatively, you're going to notice there's this little icon here that's a link that gives you the actual link. Once you have that, you're going to open up a new tab for the internet. You're just going to paste that link in. And once you do that, now I have the form so that it's available to fill out. So if I were filling this out, whether it's on my device or on my phone, I can now go ahead and say, which student am I looking at? I can fill out these questions, whatever I'm seeing with the student. And I can go ahead and type in my observations or things that I see. And once I hit submit, that form now will go into the database. And if I'm going on to another student, I can simply say submit another response. The idea here is that I can just keep using this form repeatedly with all my students, and it's going to organize that for me. Again, if you're new to this and you're just getting started, you'll probably just choose one area to focus on to see how you can use the forms. Often I choose a subject area that I teach repeatedly throughout the year, which might include something like reading or writing. And if I want to come back, I can come back to the other tab. And I'm just going to hit cancel because I don't need that link anymore. And you're going to notice here where it says responses. If I click on that word responses, this is where I'm going to get this overview of my whole class. This is really helpful for when you're just analyzing your class as a whole. So for example, in this first one, I can see I have a lot of observations for Leah, but not very many for Andrea, and actually I have none for Gabriel. So as an educator, that tells me I need to go spend some time looking at Gabriel to make sure that I know what's going on with him. And again, depending on how you enter these questions, you can kind of get an idea of perhaps where your students are lacking knowledge. So I might say something like, oh, only 25% of my students could identify a sphere. So I may need to do a follow-up lesson on that. You can also, if you are just perhaps marking assignments of a student, you might create a form that you actually enter in an option to put in percents as one of your responses, if you like to look at things that way as well. Now, if you are wanting to look at the individual students' observations, you're going to come up to this little green icon here that's going to open this up in Google Sheets, which is very similar to Excel survey and Excel forms if you've ever used that. And once that opens, you're going to notice that it puts it into a spreadsheet for me. What I really like about this is it automatically creates a timestamp here, which means if I'm using the same form all year long, perhaps to record reading or writing observations, I can actually see when those dates were, which helps me to identify how the student has grown over the course of the year. You'll notice that the questions I put in are here, and I can see the responses for each individual student. And what's really great is you're able to filter out responses. So you'll notice the little boxes, when you click on them, have a little drop-down arrow here. And when you click on that drop-down arrow, I can choose to click on or off any student. So I may only want to look at Heather's responses, and I'm going to click OK. And what you notice is it filters out everybody else, and all I can see here is Heather, which is really helpful if you just want to look at one particular student, or if you're meeting with a parent or your principal to go over some observations and assessment for that student. I can go ahead and click back off that arrow, and I can say clear and say OK. You'll notice that gets rid of all those responses. or I can select all and get them all back again. If I've entered these questions as a mark or a percentage, I can also filter that out, which would allow me to see which one of my students are performing below level, which would allow me to target them as well. Now, you're going to notice when I click here, there is no drop-down arrow for this. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click on the C, it's going to highlight the cell, and I'm going to come up to where it says Data, and you're going to notice where it says Filter Views. And if I click that, I can create a new filter. Once I say a new filter, it's going to provide me that drop-down arrow for me to check things on or off. And that's how you can make use of the Google Sheets to track your students in a really efficient way. And again, I can come back over to my Google Sheets here and I can see the overall class. And I can come back to the form itself. And here's all my forms sitting here. And I may choose now to alter that form. I can actually go back and add a question if I decided to do that. So I could click back in here. And now I'm able to change this form. So I may decide I want to add a question. So I may say something like grade assigned. And what I can do is perhaps make this a multiple choice. And I might say something like below 50%, 50 to 60%. And you can keep adding these in however you like to do that. And you can change those intervals however it makes sense to you. And as soon as you click out of that box, it completes that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you one more time. I'm going to click send. You can either email it to yourself if you're going to use this on a different device, or again, you can copy the link, open a new tab on the internet, paste that in, and it's going to then take me to the form that I can fill out. And I just want to show you what it looks like if I click off and I give that student a percent. So let's say that the student performed below 50%. And then I'm going to submit another form for the next student. And let's choose a different student, and we'll just go ahead and say maybe this student did quite well and got a higher percentage of a mark. And sometimes I'll use that if I'm marking their assignments right beside me. And again, I'm going to come back to that form, and I can see my responses here. And you're going to notice that I can also look at it, the overall summary, and now it's added those percentages. So I'm kind of getting an idea of half my class is sitting below 50% or half of them are sitting at a higher percent. You can also click here where it says individual, and you can see them that way. But again, you can also come up to that little green icon where it says sheets. And just as that opens slowly, I'm just going to show you how we can filter those responses. So again, I'm going to click on this cell that I want to filter. And I'm going to come up to data, and I'm going to say filter views, create new filter. Now I've got the little arrow here to help me do that. And I'm going to click that, and I might say I only want to see the students who perform below 50%. And now it would filter that out. So that would help me to regroup my students so I would know which students I might need to target. And I might want to select all and bring them all back again. So I hope that helped you create an option for you to be efficient with your documentation of your assessment data.